reveals the damaging effects of marijuana use. This research comes from the proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences.
It finds that long-term marijuana use deteriorates the part of the brain responsible for decision-making. The effects are more severe in people who start using at a young age. Our Dr. David Agus is with us from Los Angeles. Dr. Agus, good morning.
Good morning, Charlie.
What do we make of this?
Well, there have been studies done in mice showing that if chronic marijuana use makes the frontal lobe of the brain smaller. And the data in humans just wasn't that definitive. Now, with over 100 individuals studied with and without marijuana use, we can clearly say that people who use marijuana have a smaller frontal lobe, the decision-making part of the brain. But what's interesting is they also have more connections out of that area. And the more structural changes happen, the younger they start. But after 6 or 7 years, those structural changes start to go away.
So did they already have a smaller frontal lobe, or did the marijuana shrink their brain?
Key question, and the answer is we just don't know. This was a study looked at one moment in time. They took people by questionnaire who used marijuana versus not, and they looked at those. It wasn't what we call a prospective study. You know, marijuana is rated a Class 1 narcotic, so it is very, very difficult in our country today to do real studies by giving patients or subjects marijuana. That part needs to change so we can study it.
You know, Dr. David Agus, here in New York City, they just announced they would no longer be arresting people caught with small amounts of marijuana. We just had an election where it became legal. Recreational marijuana became legal in some additional states. Do you think this type of study could have an impact on public policy?
No question. I feel like I should be holding up a bag of oregano when I answer this. But there's no question a study like this really puts into our heads that there are changes in the brain, especially in young people when they use marijuana. And so I think it is somewhat premature to go forward with these legislations. Again, I'm not a policy expert, but I think we need more study to understand it, because I'm somewhat afraid after seeing data like this about what could happen.
So what will you need to know before you would recommend medicinal marijuana?
Well, there are two things. One is I want a prospective study. That is, I want to follow people before and after they use marijuana use to show that the changes of the brain are actually from the marijuana use. Second is an observation in this study is that people who use marijuana had a slightly lower, significantly lower IQ than the people who didn't. And again, we want to follow that over time.
All right. David Agus, important information. Thank you.
All right, Shalom, Mr. Ragam. Before I begin, I want to start off by giving our praise on the glory to Yahweh, by Hashem El Shai, by Hashem Kakudash, double honor to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone, peace and salutations unto the elect. You know, the video you saw earlier was a video of a very popular narcotic called marijuana, weed, pot, you know, whatever bud, whatever you call it, you know. And I wanted to make a lesson on this because Slovakia, but you know, I want to make a video on this because, you know, a lot of people tend to use the drug. Okay, and this article says approximately 1 in 10 people who use marijuana will become addicted when they start before age 18. The rate of addiction rises to 1 in 6. All right, and a lot of people, you know, use marijuana, and a lot of people sell marijuana, you know. But what people don't understand is that, you know, that yes, you know, the Lord made it so that there's some benefits, but you're not supposed to smoke it. Okay, you're not supposed to be smoking it. All right, you know, and these are some negative effects. You know, yes, the Lord made this plant. The Lord made it, you know, as He made everything else in this world, but this has lots of negative effects when you smoke it. Just read aloud some of them. Brain health. Marijuana can cause permanent IQ loss of as much as 8 points when people start using it at a young age. These IQ points do not come back even after quitting marijuana. So really, you know, it's literally making you more retarded. Literally. So that's between, you know, you're supposed to, you know, let's say you have IQ of 100, you know, that could drop up to IQ of 92. All right. And then there's mental health. Studies think marijuana used to depression, anxiety, suicide planning, and psychotic episodes. It is not known, however, if marijuana uses it to cause these conditions. And then it goes on to say athletic performance. Research shows that marijuana affects timing, movement, and coordination, which can harm athletics. Driving. People who drive under the influence of marijuana can experience dangerous effects, slower reactions, lane weaving, decreasing coordination, and difficulty reading to signals and sounds of the road. You know, um, luckily for me, the Lord never made me, one of those people who would use it, who use marijuana, and so I never got addicted. But a lot of brothers out there, they'll tell you firsthand, how it makes you feel. All right, because when you smoke a lot of weed, you become dependent on it. You become dependent on it to go to sleep, to do certain things. You become dependent on it, and when you're not on weed, you become very anxious, very, very mad, very this and that. All right, and it just affects you overall when you smoke it. Okay, and the Lord said you're not supposed to be smoking things. All right, you're not supposed to be defiling your temple. All right, and you know, it's it's it does have some positive benefits to it, but you know, you're not supposed to be smoking it. Yes, it's an herb, but you're not supposed to be smoking it. All right, because then you get addicted, and then you want more and more and more until you just, you know, um, until you can't live without it, pretty much. This is 1 Corinthians 3:17. If any man defile the temple of Yahweh, him shall Yahweh destroy. For the temple of Yahweh is holy, which temple ye are. So we are the temple of the Lord. Alright, so if you're defiling the temple with smoke, what does that say to the Lord? It says you don't really care. Alright, you don't really care about what the Lord says, which is, a horrible impression to have. You know, Verse 18. Let no man deceive himself. If any man among you seemeth to be wise in this world, let him become a fool, that he may be wise. All right, and people always talking about, oh, but weed helps you, weed helps you do this, that. All right, cool, but you're not supposed to be smoking it. Bottom line, point blank, period. Verse 19. For the wisdom of this world is foolish with Yahweh, for it is written, He taketh the wise in their own craftiness. So you know, you're not supposed to really be defiling your temple. All right, there's very many scriptures that go into it. And there's just certain things you're not meant to do, and that you shouldn't do. Right? And one of them is weed. Even though most people, tend to smoke it, 1 in 10 people become addicted, and for teenagers it's 1 in 6. But you're supposed to be staying away from that. And to anybody out there who is smoking, if you didn't know any better, now's your time to correct your ways. All right. So with that, I'm gonna say shalom.